"Call anyone you want," Officer Blake Harris said, sliding Elena Carter's phone across the hood of his patrol car like it was a toy he had already decided she did not deserve. "People like you always know somebody until it matters." The words landed in front of Martin Luther King Elementary at exactly 4:18 in the afternoon, sharp enough to quiet the line of parents waiting beside the curb. School buses hissed near the crosswalk. Children's sneakers squeaked against the sidewalk. A warm Georgia sun hung low behind the flagpole, turning the windows gold, but the air around Elena suddenly felt cold. She stood beside her old blue Camry with one hand resting gently on her niece Sophia's shoulder and the other held open where the officers could see it. She was not dressed like a courtroom attorney. No blazer. No leather briefcase. No polished heels clicking across marble floors. Just a mustard yellow sweater, dark jeans, flat shoes, and the tired face of a woman who had left work early to pick up a 10-year-old girl from school. That was exactly what Harris thought he saw, a black woman he could embarrass in public, a woman he could question without explanation, search without cause, and dismiss if she dared ask why. But stay with this story, because the phone call he mocked would soon make his own police chief stop speaking, make a federal judge demand his badge number, and make everyone standing near that school realize the quietest person on the sidewalk had the most powerful voice. If this kind of story reminds you that dignity still matters, subscribe and keep watching until the end, because what happened after that call did not just change one afternoon, it opened a door Harris thought had been locked forever. Elena looked at the phone on the hood, then at Officer Kyle Bennett standing near the second patrol car, younger, uncertain, trying to hide behind his sunglasses. Bennett's body camera blinked red. Harris's did too. Several parents had slowed down now, pretending to check messages while their cameras angled toward the scene. Sophia squeezed Elena's fingers. "Aunt Elena," she whispered, "did we do something wrong?" Elena did not look away from Harris. Her voice stayed low, steady, almost soft. "No, sweetheart. Asking a question is not doing something wrong." Harris smiled as if she had just proven his point. "You were seen hanging around the school entrance." Elena blinked once. "I was picking up my niece. Her teacher knows me. The front office knows me." "Then you will not mind opening your bag and your trunk." The request came too easily, too casually, as if the word mind could make it lawful. Elena felt the familiar pressure rise behind her ribs, the same pressure she had heard in hundreds of client interviews, the moment ordinary people realized authority was asking for more than it had earned. She took a slow breath. "Officer, am I being detained?" Harris tilted his head. "You asking because you have something to hide?" "I am asking because I need to understand the legal basis for your order." A few feet away, Bennett's expression shifted. He knew the question was clean. Harris heard it as disrespect. "There it is," Harris said, loud enough for the parents to hear. "Everybody is a lawyer now." Elena reached for her phone only after he nodded toward it, making sure every movement was slow. "I do not consent to any search," she said. "But I will make a call." Harris gave a short laugh and tapped the phone with 2 fingers. "Go ahead. Call anyone you want." Elena unlocked the screen, found the contact saved under M. Whitmore, and pressed call. Then, because Harris had demanded the performance, she placed it on speaker. The call rang once, then twice, each tone sounding strangely loud against the noise of buses, car doors, and children calling to one another near the school gate. Elena Carter kept her face still, but inside her chest, her heartbeat moved fast and hard. She knew how scenes like this could be rewritten. She knew how a calm question could become suspicious behavior once typed into a report. She knew how a woman standing beside her niece could be described as loitering if the person writing the sentence had already decided she did not belong. That was why she let the phone ring on speaker. Not to show off. Not to threaten. To make sure the truth had more than one witness. "Officer Blake." Harris leaned against the side of his patrol car with the casual confidence of a man performing for a crowd he believed would eventually side with him. His dark sunglasses hid his eyes, but not the small smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. Officer Kyle Bennett stood several feet behind him, hands near his vest, body camera still blinking, posture less certain than before. Sophia pressed closer to Elena's side, her backpack hanging from one shoulder, the zipper half open, a purple worksheet folder peeking out like a bright little piece of normal life trapped in the middle of something it should never have touched. Elena looked down at her niece for half a second. Sophia was 10, old enough to understand tone, young enough to think adults in uniforms always knew the rules. Elena wanted to protect that belief, but not at the cost of teaching her to mistake fear for respect. Before Elena became a lawyer, before judges knew her name and city attorneys learned to stop underestimating her, she had been a girl in Savannah watching her father sit on a curb beside his own car while an officer emptied his glove compartment onto the street. Her father had been a school maintenance supervisor, a quiet man who carried peppermints in his shirt pocket and fixed neighborhood bicycles for free. That day, he had done everything right. He answered calmly. He kept his hands visible. He even apologized for confusion that was not his. Still, Elena remembered the way people drove by without stopping. She remembered the heat rising off the pavement. She remembered her father's voice later that night when he said, "Some people think dignity is something they can hand you or take back." He had said it softly, but Elena heard the wound underneath. Years later, she went to law school because of that wound. Not because she wanted to argue for a living, and not because she loved courtrooms, but because she hated the particular silence that falls when someone powerful is wrong and everyone else is too afraid to name it. The call kept ringing. Harris gave a dry laugh. Friend not picking up. Elena did not answer. She looked at the school building instead, at the brick walls, the flag. Moving lightly in the breeze, the hand-painted banner that said Kindness Week near the front entrance. The irony almost hurt. Harris took a step closer. You understand this can go a lot easier if you just cooperate. Elena lifted her eyes to him. I have cooperated. I answered your questions. I identified myself. I showed why I am here. I am not consenting to a search without a lawful reason. The words were clean and measured, but Harris treated them like dirt on his shoes. You people always think a few legal words change the situation. Bennett's head turned slightly, fast enough that Elena noticed. So did two parents near the crosswalk. One mother lowered her sunglasses. A father holding a lunchbox stopped pretending not to listen. Sophia's fingers tightened around Elena's hand. Elena felt it, that tiny pulse of fear traveling from child to adult, asking for safety without words. Aunt Elena, Sophia whispered, maybe just let them look. Elena's throat tightened, but her voice stayed gentle. Baby, privacy is not guilt. Harris rolled his shoulders as if bored. That sounds real nice. Then the line clicked. A woman's voice came through the speaker, older, precise, and calm in a way that immediately changed the air. Elena, I am about to enter chambers. Is this urgent? Harris opened his mouth, ready to mock whoever had answered, but Elena spoke first. Judge Whitmore, this is Elena Carter. I am outside Martin Luther King Elementary with my niece. 2 officers are detaining me and demanding to search my bag and trunk. I have asked for the legal basis. They have not provided one. The sidewalk went quiet in pieces. First Bennett. Then the parents closest to the patrol car. Then Harris, whose smirk faded slowly, like a light being dimmed behind glass. The voice on the phone sharpened, still calm, but no longer casual. Put the officer on the line. Elena looked at Harris. She did not smile. She did not need to. She would like to speak with you. Officer Blake Harris looked at the phone as if the small black screen had insulted him. For the first time since Elena Carter stepped out of her blue Camry, his confidence did not vanish, but it changed shape. It tightened. His jaw set harder. His shoulders squared in the careful way people stand when they suddenly remember they are being watched. The school buses had begun pulling away from the curb, their diesel engines groaning into the warm afternoon, but the sidewalk near the patrol car stayed unnaturally still. Parents held backpacks, lunchboxes, and half-finished conversations in frozen hands. Sophia stood close enough for Elena to feel the tremble in her fingers. Officer Kyle Bennett stared at the phone, then at Harris, then at the tiny red light on his own body camera, as if that blinking dot had become louder than every engine on the street. Harris gave a short, dry laugh and leaned toward the speaker without touching it. Ma'am, this is a routine police matter. I do not know what she told you, but she is making this more difficult than necessary. Judge Margaret Whitmore did not raise her voice. She did not have to. Identify yourself. Harris blinked behind his sunglasses. Excuse me. Your name, badge number, and department. Then you may explain the legal basis for detaining my former clerk outside an elementary school. The word clerk moved through the crowd like a match struck in a dark room. Elena kept her eyes on Harris. She did not smile. She had learned years ago that some victories were too serious for satisfaction. Harris straightened, but the old arrogance fought to stay alive in his face. Officer Blake Harris, badge 2741, Fulton County Police Department. And the basis? Judge Whitmore asked. Harris glanced toward Bennett. She matched a description. What description? A pause opened. It was small, but everyone heard it. A child laughed somewhere near the playground fence, unaware of the silence gathering only yards away. Harris cleared his throat. Suspicious female near school property. That is not a description, the judge said. That is a conclusion. What specific facts led you to demand a search of her bag and vehicle? Bennett lowered his gaze. Harris's hand flexed once near his belt, not threatening, just unsettled, a man reaching for control and finding air. For officer safety. Did she threaten you? No, but she was argumentative. Elena felt Sophia look up at her. The word argumentative had done exactly what Elena expected it to do. It tried to turn questions into misconduct. It tried to make calm sound dangerous. Judge Whitmore's voice came back slower now, each word clean as polished stone. Did she threaten you, or did she ask for the legal basis of your order? Harris did not answer immediately. That silence said more than his report ever would. A father near the crosswalk raised his phone higher. Lena, a teacher's aide who knew Sophia by name, stepped out from the school entrance and stopped beside the flagpole, worry written across her face. Bennett finally spoke, so quietly it almost disappeared under the traffic. She asked for the basis, sir. Harris turned his head toward him. Stay out of it. But the words had already landed. Elena felt the air shift again, not into safety, not yet, but into witness. The judge heard it too. Was that another officer? She asked. Bennett swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. Officer Kyle Bennett. Officer Bennett, is your body camera active? His eyes moved to Harris, then back to Elena, then down to the camera on his vest. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Preserve it. Harris's face hardened. Judge, with respect, you are interfering with an active scene. No, Officer Harris, Judge Whitmore said. I am documenting one. The sentence fell over the sidewalk with quiet force. Elena felt Sophia's grip loosen just a little, not because the child understood every legal word, but because children understand when fear begins to lose its voice. Harris looked at Elena then, truly looked at her, and for the first time he seemed to understand that the woman in the mustard-yellow sweater was not standing there alone. Elena Carter felt the sidewalk change beneath her, not physically, but in the way a place changes when the truth finally enters it. A minute earlier, the space outside Martin Luther King Elementary had belonged to Officer Blake Harris and his assumptions. Now it belonged to every camera, every parent, every child pressed close to an adult's leg, and one calm voice coming from a phone on the hood of a patrol car. Harris removed his sunglasses slowly, as if showing his eyes might help him regain control. They were pale, narrowed, and colder than his voice. Ms. Carter, he said, suddenly using her name with forced politeness, this situation can still be resolved if you simply comply. Elena kept one hand on Sophia's shoulder. I have complied with lawful instructions. I have not consented to a search. Harris gave a tight smile. You keep saying that like it changes something. Judge Whitmore answered before Elena could. It does. The words were so plain that no one moved. A breeze passed through the school flags and lifted the corner of a dismissal notice taped to the front door. Somewhere behind the building, a basketball bounced twice and rolled away. Officer Bennett shifted beside the second patrol car, his face now fully visible, young and uneasy. Harris turned slightly, lowering his voice as if the phone could somehow stop hearing him. Bennett, walk the perimeter. See if anyone called in a concern. Bennett looked toward the school entrance, where staff members were watching. Sir, dispatch did not give a specific suspect description. Harris's head snapped toward him. I gave you an order. Bennett did not move right away. That hesitation was small, but it widened the crack that had already formed. Elena noticed it. Judge Whitmore noticed it through the silence. So did the parents holding their phones higher now. Officer Bennett, the judge said, do not leave if your body camera contains relevant footage. I am advising preservation because this encounter may be subject to review. Harris stepped closer to the phone. Your Honor, with all due respect, she is escalating a routine stop by turning this into a spectacle. Elena felt Sophia flinch at the word spectacle. She leaned closer to her niece and spoke softly, though she knew the microphones might catch it. We are not a spectacle. We are people. The sentence quieted the adults more than any shout could have. Harris looked at her then with irritation that had lost its disguise. You were asked a simple question when we arrived. Elena nodded. You asked why I was near the school. I told you I was picking up my niece. You asked for identification. I gave it to you. You asked to search my bag and trunk. I asked for your legal basis. You did not provide one. Her words came like measured footsteps, each one placed carefully enough that no one could call them a stumble. Harris exhaled through his nose. You are very practiced. I had to be, Elena said. That answer was not for him. It was for Sophia, for the parents, for every person who had ever rehearsed calm because the world punished their fear and their anger differently. Judge Whitmore's voice returned, firmer now. Officer Harris, I am contacting Chief Daniel Ross. Until he joins this call, you will not search her property, you will not turn off any recording device, and you will clearly state whether Miss Carter is free to leave. Harris stared at the phone as if it had grown heavier on the hood. The afternoon sun caught the edge of his badge and flashed once, bright and useless. Around them, the school day continued at the edges, but inside the circle of silence, everything waited for his answer. Elena felt Sophia's breathing slow under her hand. Bennett looked down at his camera, then up at Harris, and the choice in his face became visible. Harris could still write a report. He could still choose official words. But he could no longer pretend there had been no witnesses. He could no longer pretend Elena was just another woman alone beside a car. For the first time since the stop began, the power on that sidewalk was no longer traveling in only one direction. The phone stayed on the patrol car hood, speaker facing upward, small and ordinary, yet every person on the sidewalk seemed to understand that it had become the center of the scene. Elena Carter stood beside it with Sophia tucked close to her side, feeling the child's shoulder rise and fall beneath her hand. Officer Blake Harris stared down at the screen, his face caught between anger and calculation. He was not used to being questioned in public, not like this, not by a black woman in a mustard yellow sweater, not in front of parents, school staff, children, cameras, and a federal judge who knew exactly which questions to ask. His voice came out flatter when he finally spoke. She is not under arrest. Judge Whitmore answered immediately. That was not my question. Is Miss Carter free to leave? Harris glanced at Bennett, then at the phones lifted around him. At this time, we are still conducting an inquiry. Based on what specific allegation? The judge asked. The silence that followed felt longer than it was. A school bus turned the corner and disappeared down the block, leaving behind a faint smell of diesel and warm rubber. Sophia's grip tightened again. Elena looked straight ahead, careful not to fill the silence for him. She had learned that powerful people often counted on the uncomfortable person to rescue them with extra words. She offered none. Harris cleared his throat. There was a concern about an unauthorized adult near school property. A teacher's aide near the flagpole spoke before she seemed to realize she had decided to. She is authorized, Lena said, voice trembling but clear. She signs Sophia out twice a week. She is on the pickup list. Every head turned toward her. Lena swallowed, but she did not step back. The front office knows her. Elena felt something warm and painful move through her chest. Not relief exactly. Recognition. The first witness had chosen not to stay silent. Harris gave Lena a look that made her lower her eyes, but she had already said it, and the phones had already heard it. Judge Whitmore's voice sharpened. Officer Harris, did you verify that before demanding to search her property? Harris said nothing. Bennett shifted again, and this time his voice came more clearly. "No, Your Honor. We did not verify with the front office before the request." Harris turned toward him. "Bennett." The younger officer looked frightened, but the fear did not stop him. She provided identification. She explained she was picking up her niece. She refused consent, but she did not threaten anyone. A murmur passed through the parents like wind through dry leaves. Elena did not move. She could feel Sophia looking up at her, absorbing the shape of courage from people who were afraid and speaking anyway. Then another sound entered the phone line, a faint click, followed by a man's voice. "Judge Whitmore, this is Chief Daniel Ross." Harris's expression changed so quickly that Elena almost missed it. The color drained from his certainty first, then from his posture. His shoulders remained squared, but the confidence behind them had thinned. "Chief," Harris said, suddenly formal. "We have a situation outside Martin Luther King Elementary." Chief Ross did not return the greeting. "I am listening to the situation. Officer Harris, preserve all body camera footage. Do not conduct a search. Return Ms. Carter's property and provide your incident number." Harris's mouth tightened. "Chief, there are facts here that have not been fully communicated." "Then your report will include them," Ross said. "It will also include why a federal judge, a school employee, your partner, and multiple parent witnesses are all describing the same concern." The afternoon seemed to hold still. Elena looked down at the phone, then at Harris. She saw the moment he understood what she had understood from the beginning: this was no longer a sidewalk encounter he could shape alone. He picked up her phone carefully now, not tossing it, not sliding it, and held it out. Elena accepted it with one hand while keeping the other on Sophia's shoulder. "Thank you," she said, not because he deserved warmth, but because she refused to let him decide what kind of woman this moment would make her. Harris stepped back. His jaw was tight. Bennett looked at the ground, then lifted his eyes to Elena. There was shame there, but also something trying to become honesty. Elena nodded once, small and unreadable. The call remained connected, and Judge Whitmore's voice softened just enough for Sophia to hear the humanity inside it. "Elena, are you and the child safe?" Elena looked at her niece, at the parents, at the school doors, at the patrol lights no longer feeling quite so large. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "We are safe now." The moment Chief Ross's voice entered the call, the scene outside Martin Luther King Elementary did not explode, it emptied. The loudest things became small things: the soft flutter of the flag above the entrance, the distant squeal of a bus turning onto Peachtree Avenue, the faint buzz of the patrol car radio, Sophia's breathing slowing beneath Elena Carter's steady hand. Officer Blake Harris stood with Elena's phone no longer in his possession, his sunglasses hanging from one hand, his face exposed to the parents who had watched him mock a woman he thought had no one important to call. Elena did not look triumphant. Triumph felt too cheap for a moment that had frightened the child. She looked tired, composed, and deeply awake, as if every part of her had been forced to notice every sound, every glance, every word that could matter later. Judge Whitmore remained on speaker, her tone calm but firm. "Officer Harris, I want the incident number read aloud." Harris looked toward Chief Ross's voice as if hoping the chief might soften the order. He did not. "Read it," Ross said. Harris pulled a small notepad from his vest and gave the number, each digit sounding heavier than the one before it. Elena repeated it quietly, committing it to memory. Bennett wrote it down too, then tore the page from his pad and handed it to her without waiting for permission. His hand trembled slightly. "For your records, ma'am," he said. Harris's eyes cut toward him, but Bennett did not take the paper back. Elena accepted it. "Thank you, Officer Bennett." The gratitude was measured, not warm enough to erase his earlier silence, but honest enough to recognize the choice he had finally made. Sophia looked up at Bennett with the careful curiosity of a child deciding whether an adult was safe. Bennett seemed to understand, because he stepped back instead of closer. Around them, parents began lowering their phones, not because the moment had stopped mattering, but because the danger had changed shape. It had become paperwork now. It had become footage, statements, timelines, and names spoken clearly enough to survive denial. Lena, the teacher's aide, crossed the sidewalk slowly and crouched near Sophia, keeping her voice gentle. "Your backpack is still in the office, sweetheart." I kept it safe. Sophia nodded, but she did not leave Elena's side. Elena brushed a thumb over her niece's shoulder. We will get it together. Harris cleared his throat, trying to recover the official rhythm of command. Miss Carter, you are free to go. Elena turned to him. The afternoon light caught the mustard color of her sweater, warm against the blue and red reflection on the car door. Was I not free to go before? Harris did not answer. Judge Whitmore did. That silence will be noted. For the first time, a flicker of something like fear moved across Harris's face, not the fear of danger, but the fear of being accurately seen. Elena picked up her phone, ended the call only after Judge Whitmore told her to contact her office immediately, then slipped it into her pocket with deliberate care. She could have said many things then. She could have named every insult, every assumption, every second he had tried to make her small. Instead, she looked at Sophia and chose the lesson before the anger. Come on, baby. Let us get your backpack. As they walked toward the school entrance, the parents parted without speaking. Some looked ashamed. Some looked relieved. One father gave Elena a small nod, the kind people offer when they know they should have spoken sooner. Elena accepted none of it and rejected none of it. She simply kept walking. Behind her, Bennett spoke quietly into his radio, requesting that all footage from the encounter be preserved. Harris stood beside the patrol car, still, unsmiling, no longer the center of gravity. Inside the school office, the air smelled like copy paper, crayons, and lemon cleaner. Sophia's purple folder sat on the counter. Elena picked it up and tucked it into the backpack herself. Only then, away from the patrol lights and the watching crowd, did Sophia finally ask the question that had been sitting in her eyes. Aunt Elena, why did he think you were wrong? Elena knelt until they were eye level. She wanted to give an answer soft enough for 10 years old and true enough for the world waiting outside. Because some people mistake power for being right, she said. And some people mistake calm for weakness. Sophia looked down at her shoes. Were you scared? Elena took both of her hands. Yes. The word surprised the child. It mattered that it did. But fear is not the same as guilt. And being afraid does not mean you have to give away your dignity. Sophia nodded slowly, and Elena saw the lesson settle, not fully, not yet, but somewhere it could grow. Outside, the patrol lights finally turned off. The silence that followed was not empty. It felt like the first clean breath after a room full of smoke. That evening, after Sophia had gone home with her mother and the school sidewalk had returned to its ordinary rhythm, Elena Carter sat alone in her small office downtown with the lights off and the city glowing through the blinds. The mustard yellow sweater she had worn that afternoon was folded over the back of a chair, and her phone lay face up on the desk beside the incident number Officer Bennett had written by hand. For almost 20 minutes, Elena did nothing but listen to the air conditioner hum above the ceiling tiles. She had been safe for hours. She knew that. Judge Whitmore had already called twice. Chief Ross had sent a formal message confirming that all body camera footage was being preserved. Lena had emailed a written statement before dinner. 3 parents had uploaded videos from different angles. Everything she needed was beginning to gather itself into evidence. Still, her hands trembled when she reached for a glass of water. The body remembers what the mind files away. Elena opened her laptop and pulled up the database for the case she had already been building for months, the one involving repeated stops near schools, apartment complexes, and grocery store parking lots in mostly black neighborhoods. She typed Officer Blake Harris into the search bar, and the screen filled with entries she had seen before but not yet connected deeply enough. A nurse stopped after leaving a late shift. A father questioned outside a daycare. A college student asked to empty his backpack near a bus stop. A grandmother delayed outside a pharmacy because she was sitting in her car too long. Each complaint carried the same cold ending, no policy violation found. Elena leaned closer. The dates tightened in her mind. The language repeated. Suspicious presence. Refused to cooperate. Became argumentative. Officer safety concern. It was not just a pattern. It was a script. Harris had not improvised that afternoon. He had performed a role that had worked for years because the people on the other side rarely had a judge on speakerphone. Elena sat back slowly, the room suddenly feeling smaller. Her own encounter was no longer separate from the files. It was the missing bridge. The proof that what had happened to others had not been confusion, not poor communication, not isolated judgment. It was habit protected by paperwork. At 9:17, a secure message arrived from Judge Whitmore's chambers. Attached was notice of an emergency status conference connected to the ongoing misconduct review. Elena read the first line twice. Officer Harris was already named in sealed testimony from 2 prior witnesses. Her stomach tightened, not from surprise, but from the weight of confirmation. The man who had mocked her outside a school was not an accident in the system. He was one of the reasons the hearing existed. Elena stood and walked to the window. 4 floors below, traffic moved along Auburn Avenue, headlights sliding over wet pavement from an evening shower. The city looked peaceful from above, but Elena knew peace could be a matter of distance. On the desk behind her, the phone buzzed. A text from Bennett appeared. "Ms. Carter, I know this does not fix what happened. But I will tell the truth about today. My body camera was on the entire time." Elena stared at the message for a long moment. She did not forgive him through a screen. Forgiveness was too serious to be rushed. But truth mattered wherever it began. She typed back only 3 words. "Then tell it." The next morning, in a federal courtroom with high windows and polished wooden benches, Harris sat at the city table looking smaller without the sidewalk around him. Bennett took the witness chair, pale but steady, and when Judge Whitmore asked what Elena had done before the demand to search her car, he swallowed once and answered clearly. She complied. She asked for the legal basis. She did not threaten anyone. Elena sat behind counsel table, hands folded, face calm. Across the aisle, Harris looked down. The room heard the words. The record kept them. And for the first time, the script began to break. By late morning, the federal courtroom no longer felt like a place where Officer Blake Harris could hide inside polished language. Sunlight fell through the tall windows in pale stripes across the wooden floor, touching the witness chair, the counsel tables, and the row of parents who had come from Martin Luther King Elementary because they had seen what happened and refused to let the afternoon be rewritten. Elena Carter sat near the front, wearing a navy blazer now, her hair pulled back, her notebook open, her face calm in the way calm sometimes looks after fear has burned through everything unnecessary. Sophia was not in the courtroom. Elena had made sure of that. Some lessons were heavy enough the first time. Judge Margaret Whitmore adjusted her glasses and looked down at the file before her, thick now with videos, witness statements, prior complaints, dispatch records, and body camera transcripts. Harris sat at the city table beside an attorney who kept whispering into his ear, but his eyes had lost the easy certainty he carried outside the school. Without the patrol car, without the crowd he thought he could control, without the power to decide which words became official, he looked like a man listening to a door close behind him. Officer Kyle Bennett remained in the witness chair, hands folded tightly, his voice steadier than it had been when he began. The city attorney tried to soften the encounter into confusion. "Officer Bennett, is it possible Officer Harris believed there was a legitimate safety concern?" Bennett looked at Elena for one brief second, then back at the judge. "No, ma'am." Miss Carter was calm. She identified herself. She explained why she was there. She only refused consent to a search. The attorney shifted. "But refusing consent can create uncertainty for officers, correct?" Judge Whitmore lifted her eyes. Bennett answered before the objection came. "Refusing consent is not the same as creating danger." A silence followed. It was not dramatic. It was worse for Harris than drama. It was clear. Marcus Hill, the father who had recorded from near the crosswalk, testified next. Then Lena from the school office, her voice trembling at first, then strengthening as she described watching Elena sign Sophia out twice a week for months. The body camera footage played again, this time on the courtroom screen. Harris's voice filled the room, flat and mocking. Parents looked down. One woman wiped her eyes. Elena did not. She kept her gaze on the screen because she had promised herself that if the truth had to be seen, she would not look away from it. Then Judge Whitmore ordered the prior complaints unsealed for review. One by one, the pattern emerged in plain words. A nurse. A father. A college student. A grandmother. A delivery driver. Different streets, different days, same phrases appearing in reports like copied lines from the same script. Suspicious presence. Argumentative. Officer safety. Refused to cooperate. Harris looked smaller with each file. Chief Daniel Ross stood near the back wall, his face tight with the realization that this was no longer about managing public reaction. It was about what the department had allowed to become routine. When the hearing recessed, Harris approached Elena in the hallway, stopping several feet away as cameras waited near the marble stairs. For a moment, he seemed to search for the words that might save something of himself. "Miss Carter," he said, "I did not know who you were." Elena turned slowly. The hallway noise softened around them. "That was never the problem, Officer Harris," she said. "The problem is who you thought I was when you did not know." He had no answer. Behind him, Bennett lowered his eyes, not in shame alone, but in understanding. Weeks later, the department announced a formal disciplinary review, mandatory retraining on lawful stops, and an independent audit of prior complaints connected to Harris and other officers in the unit. It was not enough to heal every person who had been dismissed. Elena knew that. But it was a door forced open. That evening, she returned to her office and placed Sophia's purple worksheet folder on her desk beside the hearing transcript. She thought about her father on that curb years ago. She thought about the people who had driven past. Then she thought about Lena speaking, Bennett correcting the record, Marcus recording, Whitmore listening, and Sophia learning that truth does not need to be loud to be strong. Elena finally let herself breathe. Not because the work was finished, but because silence had lost one more place to hide. Several weeks later, the sidewalk outside Martin Luther King Elementary looked almost ordinary again. The buses came and went with their long sighs of brakes. Children spilled through the front doors in bright jackets and untied sneakers. Parents balanced coffee cups, lunch boxes, and tired smiles. The flag moved gently above the entrance, and the hand-painted kindness banner had been replaced by a new one about Reading Week. Elena Carter stood near the same curb where everything had happened, one hand holding Sophia's, the other resting around the strap of her work bag. The late afternoon sun softened the brick walls and turned the windows gold, just as it had that day, but the air felt different now. Not perfect. Not repaired. Just honest in a way it had not been before. A new sign had been posted near the pickup area, reminding officers, staff, and visitors that school security concerns must be reported through verified procedures and that all law enforcement interactions on campus grounds would be documented. It was only a sign. Elena knew better than to mistake policy for transformation. But she also knew that change often began as something small enough to be ignored by the people who feared it. Sophia looked at the sign, then up at Elena. "Is that because of you?" Elena smiled faintly. "It is because people told the truth." Across the street, Officer Kyle Bennett stood beside a patrol car, speaking politely with a crossing guard. He saw Elena and gave a small nod. She returned it, not warmly, not coldly, but with the careful respect owed to someone who had chosen the truth after failing it at first. Officer Blake Harris was no longer assigned to patrol. His disciplinary review had become part of a larger investigation, and several old complaints had been reopened. Some families would get apologies. Some would get hearings. Some would finally hear an official voice admit that what happened to them had not been their imagination. Elena thought of her father then, the quiet man on the curb in Savannah, the peppermints in his shirt pocket, the glove compartment emptied onto the street while the world passed by. She wished he could have stood beside her now. Maybe, in some way, he did. Sophia tugged gently at her sleeve. "Aunt Elena, did you know Judge Whitmore would answer?" Elena looked toward the school doors, where Lena was helping a little boy zip his backpack. "I hoped she would," she said. But even before she answered, I knew I had the right to ask why. Sophia thought about that. Her face was serious, older than 10 for a moment. "I was scared when everyone was watching." Elena knelt beside her, careful not to block the flow of children moving past them. "I was scared too." Sophia blinked. "But you sounded so calm." "Calm is not always what you feel," Elena said. "Sometimes calm is what you choose so the truth can be heard clearly." A breeze lifted the edge of Sophia's purple folder. Elena tucked it back under the child's arm and smoothed one loose braid away from her cheek. Remember this, sweetheart. Fear does not mean you are wrong. A badge does not make someone right. And kindness does not mean letting people take your dignity. Sophia nodded slowly, the way children do when a lesson is too large to hold all at once but important enough to keep. They walked toward the blue Camry together. No cameras waited this time. No crowd gathered. No sharp voice demanded anything from them. Just sunlight, school noise, and the ordinary rhythm of a day allowed to end peacefully. Elena opened Sophia's door, then paused and looked back at the curb. The place held no plaque, no flowers, no visible mark of what had happened. But Elena did not need the pavement to remember. The record remembered. The witnesses remembered. Sophia remembered. And somewhere in the department files, beneath signatures and timestamps, the truth had taken up space where silence used to live. As Elena drove away, Sophia leaned her head against the window and watched the school grow smaller behind them. "Aunt Elena," she said softly, "what if no one had answered the phone?" Elena kept both hands on the wheel, her eyes steady on the road ahead. "Then we would have kept telling the truth until someone did." The car moved through the warm Atlanta light, past houses, crosswalks, and trees bending gently over the street. The victory was not loud. It did not need to be. It lived in the breath Sophia could finally take, in the files reopened, in the officer who learned that silence can protect harm, and in the woman who refused to let humiliation decide her worth. So if you had been standing outside that school, watching a calm black woman being mocked for knowing her rights, what would you have done? Looked away, recorded quietly, or found the courage to speak before someone powerful picked up the phone?